Hello.
My name is Dr. Hansen. Nice to meet you. What's your name?
I'm Maura.
Nice to meet you, Maura.
Me too.
So, I don't know how much you know about CBT. Would you like me to kind of go over what we're going to do and what we have to accomplish, that kind of stuff?
Sure.
Okay. So, I have a little worksheet here, and just so you know, there's going to be a lot of homework with this to really kind of get you to the spot that you want to be through active kind of learning. Okay, that makes sense. So CBT really kind of deals with, the issues we have cognitively. For you, I read in your report that you have OCD, and so, those are compulsive behaviors that, we feel like we really can't control. So today, we're going to be kind of going step by step by step through everything, and I think with that structure, I hope that'll make you a little bit more comfortable if you have any nerves about this session. So right now I'm just going to set an agenda, and then we'll kind of talk through everything. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Are you feeling okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to be doing a mood check after we've talked about our agenda, and then we're going to be briefly reviewing presenting problems and kind of evaluate your condition a little bit. And then we're going to talk about, we kind of already talked about educating you on CBT, but if you have any further questions, feel free to ask anytime throughout this whole process. And then, we'll talk about kind of what are your expectations out of this therapy? What do you want? More goals. And then we'll talk about, your disorder, OCD. What is that? It's this big scary thing, but it's not so uncommon as you would think. And then I'm gonna assign you some homework, which may seem a little daunting, but believe me, it's not that bad. Okay. And then we'll have a summary at the end, and then we're going to have an evaluating feedback. And at that point, we're just going to kind of talk about how you felt the therapy session went, what you would like to improve on. If you feel like I did anything wrong, I want you to tell me so I can improve and really cater to what you need, because this is all about you and helping you become, that person that you once were, or, making yourself feel a little bit better. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's do a mood check. How are you feeling today or these past kind of weeks?
Well, I was diagnosed a couple weeks ago, and so but I've been showing the symptoms for a few years now, but it was just getting in the way of my everyday life, and so I got diagnosed, and then I was recommended to see you because you're dealing with CBT, and I don't know, I'm kind of unsure. I know it's not lost to me that I have problems with compulsing and all these obsessions that are taking over, but I am kind of skeptical about the whole homework thing, so we'll have to just see how that works out, but I do want to change my thinking and my behaviors, so it's not affecting my life so much.
We don't really do a lot about the past in CBT, so if you're kind of nervous about bringing up issues about, my childhood or something like that, I want you to know that, this is not a judgmental place if you want to talk about those things, but we really won't be discussing that. We're kind of focusing on the present and how we're going to, solve the issues that we have. So can you tell me a little bit about your compulsions that you deal with on an everyday basis? Talk about maybe what you do in the mornings.
Well, I get up and, it really isn't like a morning thing. It's that, when I leave my house and before I go to bed, and it's the idea that, did I leave the stove on? Did I leave a candle burning? Did I lock my door? Are all my doors locked? If someone were to get in, or if I left a candle burning, my house could burn down. And so, before I can be laying in bed and I'll know I have checked, but it's like I need to check again, and I can't rest until I've checked again, and I can't lay there, I've tried to be I checked it already, it's fine, but I just have to go check one more time to make sure that the doors are locked, and those are some of the things that I do, and it's getting in the way of my life, whereas I'll leave for something and I'll wonder, I'll be on the road for a half an hour, and I'll think, did I lock my door? Did I leave my garage door open? And sometimes I will turn around and go back to see if I did that, and I did. I haven't ever caught where I haven't locked something.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just getting in the way of like my relationships at work, and because I'll get to work and then these thoughts will come like, did I do this? And I will make up a reason because my coworkers don't really understand.
Right.
To them it's like get over it type of thing, but it's hard because not many people understand it. So I'll have to, I only work about 10 minutes from home, so if I can do it on lunch or take a 15-minute break, I'll go do that. But it gets in the way of that, and nobody just really, they kind of just say, "Well, stop thinking about it," and it doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a little bit of the things, and I mean it's changed over the years where, when I was, now it's just I think it's partly because I'm living alone, whereas when I was with my family, I could see like my dad doing the things and locking the doors, and then it wasn't on me. Whereas now that I'm living alone, it's like did I do this? So I think that's kind of how it got to be really bad, and that's why I moved to be diagnosed me.
Okay. So when did you kind of first see that it started to interfere with your daily life? Was it a couple months ago, a couple years ago, or maybe when you moved in by yourself?
I think it's partly when I moved in by myself, but also when I got a full-time job, and it wasn't just a job; it was my career.
Mm-hmm.
I worked hard for this, went to college, and it was really getting in the way of productivity at work, and I knew that I wasn't getting as much done in the day that I should, because I mean, even if I wasn't compulsing, I was obsessing over, did I do this? So then if I'm thinking about that, I'm not focusing on what I should be working on at work. And so I think that just got to be where I couldn't do well at my job and have this issue without seeking help. So that's kind of when I thought I have to figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So was this, when did you first kind of get your full-time job? Was it a couple months ago, or was it this past year?
Well, I got my full-time job. I was hired about a month ago, and then my first 2 weeks were pretty rough. And then it was 2 weeks ago that I was diagnosed, because it was kind of like it just kind of hit that this really isn't working, where like with school it was littler things, it wasn't as noticeable, but then I think I just cared more about the job, that I really just was overwhelming. But I really have been showing these things in different ways for a few years now.
Okay. And, this seems to be an obvious question, but it's something that a lot of people don't get asked. But do you want to change these compulsions?
I do, because I'm a motivated person, and I want to do well at my work, and I want to have normal relationships, and I can't do that right now. It's really affecting my life.
Okay, so something else that we kind of do in CBT therapy is it's, like I said, very homework intensive, and I know you kind of raised concern about that earlier, but what I want you to do right now is I want you to maybe write 3 aspects of your life that your compulsion is kind of distorting right now. I heard, work, relationships. It sounded like you were laying up at night, so maybe sleep is a little distorted as well. So if you could do that for me, that would be great.
Okay, so yeah, my number one concern right now is work, for sure. And then my family and friends not really understanding, or kind of just telling me to get over it. And then what else? I mean, sleep definitely is one, but just kind of like overall mental and physical
Like
well-being, yeah.
Okay. So we've kind of identified the main problems that you have right now. And do you have any questions so far on CBT or anything like that?
No, not really.
Okay, good. And again, just let me know if you're experiencing, anything like that. Now that we have those up there, what do you want to work on in here? Or what are your expectations out of this therapy? Looking at those three things, what would you want most about changing them?
I want to decrease I want to change my thoughts. I want to go to work and not think 20 times in an hour, did I lock my door? Did I leave the candle burning that I had last night? I made dinner. Did I leave the stove on? And I want to decrease the amount that I think about those things. And I think once I can do that, these things will all become a little bit easier and my relationships will be better. And I'll sleep more, which may, change everything. But right now it's just not working.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So another thing I want you to write on the board is some goals that you have. CBT isn't very a long, kind of drawn out therapy. It's very, we're going to fix the problems that you want to fix in a short amount of time, and I'm going to teach you skills that'll help you prevent yourself from relapsing, or you'll kind of be your own therapist, kind of like your own cheerer honor, and that's kind of what I want to teach you. So if you could write down maybe, let's say, 3 goals that you want to get out of our sessions, or just therapy in general.
I want to decrease the amount of times I check the doors. 3, you said?
Yes. Or 2. If you feel like doing 2 instead, that's totally fine as well. We can always add to the list later.
Okay, so if I can decrease the amount of times I check the doors, then maybe I can limit the amount of times I leave work to check.
Okay, very good. So we haven't really talked about this yet, but how often do you leave work, say, in a day?
I mean, sometimes it varies by week, but since I've only been at my job for about a month, I'd say I've probably left maximum 3 times a week.
Oh.
So some days are better than others, but it really has been. That's not normal to leave work and go home and check.
So it's 3 times a week, not 3 times a day.
Not 3 times a day.
Okay.
I don't think I'd be at my job if I left that much.
Well, I applaud you for, I don't want to minimize your problems, but 3 times a week, that sounds like you have a lot of self-control in that. And I feel like if, you didn't have as much, it might be 3 times a day. So, think about that a little bit. There are these things that we say that are automatic thoughts. And I actually have this worksheet for you. And it kind of talks to you about your automatic thoughts, and it has it's part of the homework actually. Can't see. Let's see if I can do that. Oh, it's right here. So I kind of highlighted some things. It's kind of like automatic thoughts about how you see yourself, how you judge others, and how you see your future. And really, it's a nice little tool. It may look a little kiddish, but it's easy to think about, and it's put in kind of some easy terms, because us psychologists have kind of like psychobabble, and I want you to feel comfortable with having like things that you can read and be like, okay, I don't want to get stuck in a negative thought pattern. I don't want to keep thinking and thinking and thinking that my door is unlocked or my oven is on. So
This negative cycle is really something that I can relate to. I get, I'll just use an example when I'm laying in bed at night and I'm, it's my negative thought is, did I turn the stove off after dinner? Which creates my doubts and my worries that, what if I didn't turn the stove off? And then I get unpleasant feelings as I'm laying there, like, don't go, like, I shouldn't go check, but I physically, I need to, which makes me anxious, which makes me get up out of bed and check, and then it makes me feel like why did I need to do this? And then see that I did turn off the stove, which confirms my failure with the fact that I had this worry and it wasn't even anything, and then it just continues again.
See that I'm hearing what you're saying, and you're not a failure. Everyone kind of has these anxieties of, as people lay in bed. Did I lock my door? Didn't? Most people are able to say, oh, I remember, I locked it. And in your situation, you could remember that you locked it, but it's just a little bit harder to convince yourself that you did. So have you thought at all about going on any medication for OCD or anything like that, or anxiety?
I'd like to just try maybe a few more sessions with you without medication and kind of just see how I'm not opposed to it, but I'd kind of like to just see what I can do, because like you said, I do have restraints sometimes, and I can tell myself no, but it's still enough that it's getting in the way of my everyday life. So,
and I do want you to know that through my time in helping people, I found that therapy and medication kind of go hand in hand, and it's not uncommon. You're not crazy, and I want you to know that even if you did eventually go on medication, it's not a bad thing. So, and that's just kind of my plug for medication and therapy. Yeah. Let's see. So we kind of set some homework. There are actually a few worksheets in there at the back. And I want you to kind of fill those out. You can either choose to fill them out, once a day, maybe throughout the whole week or something like that, whichever one you really feel. And then also I would really want you to keep a thought journal. And
what's that?
Good question. Perfect. A thought journal is, you'll have these automatic thoughts, and they just go straight through our mind and right out into actions. So for your thought journal, when you see yourself having these compulsions, instead of maybe doing them, write down how you're feeling in that instant. Maybe you were triggered because you just got a really big project at work, and you're like, oh, it's just going to be really stressful. And then you think, what else is really stressful? My oven. Because I don't know if I've turned it off or not. So, I want you to write how you're feeling. If you start to feel stressed or want to do those compulsions, I really want you to write down how you're feeling. And then we'll take a look at that the next time you come in. And that'll just be a little tool to help us through these sessions and kind of give me insight into your daily life. And also I want to set, let's see, I don't know, would you like to write it on the board, or do you just think that you'll keep it in mind, like set some goals for the week of kind of like putting a cap on how many compulsions you can do each day?
We can just talk about it.
Okay. So, let's see. I would like you to, how often do you check the door or something as you're laying in bed? How would you say on average?
I'd say I generally get up once to do that, but before I actually go to bed, I'll right before I go get ready for bed, like brushing my teeth, I'll lock the doors and check them, and then I'll finish all my bathroom things, and I'll go check them one more time, and then make sure the lights are also turned off, and then I'll go lay in bed, and then usually it's about 15-ish minutes. I'll think to myself, did I lock the doors? Did I make sure everything was turned off? And So it's generally about once, because then I've checked my doors and things about 3 times.
Okay. So kind of like the normal thing that people do is, they'll turn off their lights, downstairs or out in the main rooms. They'll lock the door. Then they'll go brush their teeth. La da 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 da. So I want you to kind of do that regular routine of, locking the doors, turning off the windows, brushing your teeth, and going to bed. I would like to limit the compulsions of going back to check each time, say you've brushed your teeth, or you check the lock, then you're trying to get ready for bed, go check the lock, and then while you're in bed, checking the lock. I want to keep that maybe at a cap of, let's say, you can get 2 checks every night. And, if that feels like it's really difficult, I really want you to try to restrain yourself from doing that and just try to hold on to the 5-2. So, if you feel like you really need to check it again while you're turning off the lights, check the lock, oh, there's 1. And then when you're brushing your teeth, oh, I really want to check the lock again, then there's 2. But, I challenge you to, if you're laying in bed or getting on your pajamas and you feel like checking the locks or the lights again, just to kind of try to let go and say, I've checked them twice already. I know I've checked them twice because I said I would cap it at 2. Does that make sense? Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then as far as, going to work or going, say, a half-hour drive and wanting to come back, you said you do it about 3 times a week?
Mm-hmm.
I want to try to limit that to once a week. How are you feeling with that?
It'll be tough, but I think it'll be good too.
Okay. And, this is, even though this is homework that I'm giving to you, it's your choice. I can't make you do this. I want you to do this, and I want you to feel like you can tell me, even if you didn't do these things, I will never judge you. I'll never say, I'm really disappointed that you didn't do that. So, say you're having a really bad week, and you check it 3 times. I still want you to tell me that so that we can work on trying to get it down to that 1. Okay?
Right.
Okay, so let's see. Today we kind of talked about what CBT was, and then what your current issues are, the 3 things that are weighing on you the most right now with your compulsions. And then we looked at the 2 goals of decreasing the amount of time that you spend checking your doors, and then the time limit, or limit the amount of time that you have at work, or leaving work. And then we talked about a little bit about OCD, and then we also discussed homework that I've given you. Does that sound about right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other questions?
No, I'll just make sure I get my thought journal and report back to you, and about when the next time you want me to see it.
Right, we can set up an appointment, right now if you would like. You can see me once a week, every other week, but generally it's once a week for about 10 weeks.
Okay.
7 to 10 weeks. Does that sound okay?
Yep, I'll just set up an appointment then for next week, same day next week.
Okay. And then do you have any feedback for me? Did you, I want to know how you kind of felt through this process. I know it can be a little scary, but this is a very warming and welcoming environment.
I like that you're giving me direction, because that's why I came to therapy, and I think that CBT obviously is going to help me change my thoughts, therefore I change my behaviors, and so I think by writing in a thought journal will really make me think about how often I think about this, how much, what is my emotion when I'm thinking these thoughts, what is the outcome. I just think that that'll be good for my overall progress in defeating this disease.
Mm-hmm. Good. And is there, anything that I could improve on, or anything that you would like me to do? I could do some more research into OCD for you during this week that you're, kind of going through work or anything. What would you like from me?
No, I really just think that it would be good just for us to meet next time and kind of just take my progress from there. And if I have any more questions, I'll ask you then.
Okay. All right. Well, it was really lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
I'll walk you out.
Okay.